Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor, and you may be surprised to hear me say this, but I'm not happy that the SEC and Ethereum and they're all getting into it and all this. That was never the goal at all. But when we have a rogue regulator like Gary Gensler, that's the direction a bad guy like him would go, instead of doing what he should have done, which is taken a step back and done what we asked for from the beginning, and that is give a level playing field. Don't sue anybody. Step back. Don't try to pick winners and losers like you did with Bitcoin and Ethereum, like the SEC did. That's the whole reason they got all of us riled up, is because we realized what they were up to. But that was never what was wanted. Now, there's a difference between trying to picking winners and losers on whether things are a security or not, and letting innovation thrive. There's a difference between that and anything that's going on that was fraudulent. They should go after anything fraudulent left and right. I don't care who did it. They should go after that all day long, and they should go and do investigations of those kind of people. And unfortunately, I think a lot of that kind of stuff did go on around Ethereum and the ICOs around Ethereum too. I think a lot of the usual suspects were involved in all the above, and I think all of them should be gone after, no question about it. But it's not Ethereum itself, and never was. We've said it 1,000 times. Now, against that backdrop, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like the XRP Army doesn't deserve to do it's not even called a victory lap, but it's more of like, it's about freaking time, and I don't want them to do anything to Ethereum. I want them to create a level playing field and let all innovation thrive, and let the winners and losers be picked by the free freaking market, which is the way the United States is supposed to run. That's the problem. That's the core of the problem. Okay, enough on that. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to point out and make fun of the hypocrisy of what's going on. Because truth will set you free, folks, and we're not going to ignore the truth because we don't want to hurt anybody from Ethereum's feelings and all of that. They've done plenty. They've benefited plenty. Now, Eleanor Terrett broke this yesterday afternoon. Looks like Consensus receives a Wells notice from the SEC in regards to MetaMask. So it's chosen to sue regulator first. So they received a Wells notice on MetaMask, and then they chose to sue the SEC first. The question Gary Gensler has refused to answer may now ultimately be answered in court. All right. Then there's this. It's important to point out, Ashley Prosper called it. She said, this was on one of my tweets back in March, and she said the attack, it was a Joseph Lubin. I was saying he gave a shout out to the XRP communities, and he said the attacks will continue, maybe they will intensify, maybe not. And Ashley Prosper said, hey, Joseph Lubin, have you received a Wells notice from the SEC? I think she picked up on him seeming a little freaked out. Now, these people have to be called out, no question about it. All these exchanges, when Ripple got sued, just in a second, they delisted it like it was on the shelf, and they were ready to delist it in the first place, and they did it all in line, boom, 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 like dominoes. I'm still waiting. I don't want them to delist Ethereum, but I do want a level playing field, and that includes no kind of this for this one and this for this one. And that's what's been going on with XRP from the beginning in many aspects. And Coinbase seems to have been happily going along with the anti-XRP thing most of their existence. And so I do ask them, wait a minute, you had to delist XRP immediately because Right here, these exchanges either suspended or delisted XRP for U.S. customers or across all their platforms to ensure compliance with the regulatory concerns raised by the SEC. Well, Coinbase is completely aware now that the SEC has regulatory concerns about Ethereum. Have they delisted Ethereum? I haven't seen it. I don't want them to delist Ethereum, but I want to highlight Coinbase's behavior. That's what I want to highlight. And that's what the purpose of this tweet is. Probably the tweet of the day is, Joseph Lubin has blocked me, but yesterday the funniest thing I saw, I think it was either yesterday, Bill Morgan had retweeted Joseph Lubin announcing the consensus lawsuit against the SEC, and he says, "Did you ask Bill Hinman for a refund?" Now that I got a laugh out of. Here's Consensus's thread on this, but I'm not going to highlight that because I have other things to highlight. Let me tell you where my gut is on this Consensus SEC thing, folks. My gut is where Stephen Narioff's gut is. He says, it's been over a month since SEC launched an investigation in Ethereum, and it's quite clear they've been preparing for this moment all along. Their intention is to align their stories and declare ETH a security starting from their decided move to proof of stake. Everything previous is almost non-existent. In other words, I believe, like I think Stephen Narioff believes, my gut tells me that the way that the SEC and Consensus are probably in some kind of way together on this thing, and that what they're going to do is they're going to give everyone the appearance of this battle, and they're going to give the appearance of the battle so that they take all of the spotlight away from the ICO, from the Bill Hinman free pass, and all of those nefarious transactions that happened within Ethereum, like disguised whales, from inception all the way to the Bill Hinman speech, and maybe even beyond, and or basically everything before the merge. They don't want that seen by people, because that's where all the bodies are buried, including the SEC's bodies, and I believe that's what they're trying to do here. Remember how Vitalik Buterin was wanting to erase the history on the blockchain for Ethereum? Remember that? I think it all has to do with everything. Well, on a day like today, it just couldn't be done without me putting together some Joseph Lubin greatest hits. So I won't play the whole thing, but you can go and watch it on your own time, but you should see at least a couple of minutes of it.
Well, regulators have spoken. The SEC has spoken. Bill Hinman made a speech, I think it was in mid-2018. It was disclosed that I think 18 of his colleagues at the SEC worked on the speech with him. So the SEC actually spoke. It's really a foregone conclusion at this point. There may be a regulator or two in the United States that can't bring himself to utter the fact that Ether is not a security, but I don't know why that's the case, and ultimately that just doesn't matter. I could even call Gary the shining knight of decentralization.
Oh boy.
So we will continue to do consumer utility tokens, and our friends at the SEC and other organizations around the world are comfortable that if you construct a token properly and you market it properly, then it can be an element of utility on an open platform.
Is there any plan for greater transparency within Consensus in terms of how it deploys its Ethereum?
Internally, sure. And we're a private company, and Ripple's a private company too. Absolutely. And transparency is important to us. But we also have to be strategic about information that we...
About hiding disguised whales?
In the United States, I think the SEC has a great perspective on things. So we have had deep discussions.
You would say the same thing if you thought you had solidified your Bitcoin Ethereum monopoly.
With lots of regulators in the U.S., and the SEC understands that there is this thing called a consumer utility token, and if you construct it properly and market it properly, then it's not a security. Nobody in or nobody at the SEC wants to kill blockchain for America. They also want to enforce the laws that they've been enforcing effectively for decades, protecting consumers. So they need to take a balanced approach. They need to message things positively, in my opinion. But there's also, I think, going to be even more of a reckoning coming where certain projects obviously sold securities and sold them contrary to securities law.
See, now this is a part of the whole Ethgate saga that really pisses me off, and it should piss everybody off. And this is part of the reason that I put videos like this together today, is that you have to remember, it was with Joseph Lubin, it was not good enough for him to get for him to think he had his Bitcoin Ethereum monopoly. That wasn't good enough. He had to then start taking shots at the rest of the industry. These guys were sitting there thinking that they had rigged the whole game for themselves with the SEC, and then they're sitting there watching, and he was gleefully sitting on the sidelines knowing that they were then going to go after the rest of the industry. This is the part that should piss you off. This is what's pissed me off all along. This is the reason I didn't just pick Joseph Lubin to pick on or whatever. This guy was happy that everybody else was going to be gone after, and he was sitting there with a regulatory free pass that he had gotten. And he thought it was funny, and he thought it was funny that all these people, including XRP holders, were being hurt. He thought it was funny, and he's making these comments about it. I didn't even know who this guy was before Ripple's lawsuit dropped from the SEC. I think it's funny right here. I'll show you another clip because Brad Garlinghouse was right over the target in this little clip. Watch this. This is Brad Garlinghouse on stage at Mainnet. He was never invited to Mainnet until we uncovered Ethgate, and then Ryan Selkis let him dunk him in a dunking booth. Ryan Selkis, ex-JP Morgan, by the way. But if you look right here, this is Brad Garlinghouse calling him out.
And I spent a little bit of time with your team talking about this, back then and even before 2017.
Well, the closest comparison in that era, I think, was a company you worked at, Consensus, the company.
Ryan Selkis worked at Consensus. Now it all makes sense.
Building on top of the Ethereum ecosystem and owned Ethereum. And I think was a relatively speaking, the most comparable Consensus is to Ripple as ETH was to XRP. And that both companies were active in those ecosystems trying to drive adoption.
Well, I was only at Consensus for like 8 weeks, so I'll let Joe fight that battle. But
he wants to separate himself from that. I would too, Ryan. Okay. Now look, Meta Lawman has made some interesting comments on the thing I wanted to show. With this lawsuit by Consensus being filed against SEC today, I think we can move the approval of the ETH ETF on May 23rd out of the highly unlikely bucket and drop it into the not gonna happen bucket. Wouldn't it be funny if an XRP ETF got approved before Ethereum? Then he had this one, interesting redaction in the Consensus complaint against the SEC. What is this about? And he's pointing to this. He did not want, this is from Consensus saying this, he did not want to admit that his SEC had already secretly cemented its power grab by issuing and they redacted it. This is Consensus talking about Gary Gensler not wanting to admit that whether Ethereum was a security or not. This person went to AI and asked AI to complete the sentence. So we'll go, it starts, he did not want to admit that his SEC had already secretly submitted its power grab by, one, issuing an internal memo detailing plans to regulate all cryptocurrencies as securities, by initiating a closed-door investigation into Ethereum's initial coin offering, by classifying Ethereum as a security under the guidance that was not shared with the public. That's what AI seems to think. Interesting. Then Meta Lawman, what do you know? This appears to be confirmation that the SEC is investigating sales of Ethereum by Consensus. And then this one, the Consensus complaint names Gary Gensler, 4 other commissioners, and the SEC itself as defendants. Consensus has hired the Wachtell Lipton law firm, who also represents Coinbase in its case against the SEC. The complaint alleges that the SEC has exceeded its statutory authority and violated the Administrative Procedures Act and the Due Process Clause of the Constitution. I love this one from Mr. Huber, and then we'll kind of stop here, and then I'll go into the group. Breaking: Consensus is dumping ETH on retail to finance their business. Isn't this what Laura Shin and all the bad guys said for all these years? Oh, Ripple's dumping. All the bad guys to this day in their little X spaces with 10 people to this day. Oh, Ripple's dumping on retail. Consensus and the Ethereum Foundation, have they been dumping on retail? You know, the only difference is that the Consensus and the Ethereum Foundation disguised whales have not been known, whereas Ripple has been completely transparent. That's the difference, and it's like it was used, Brad Garlinghouse has said it before, that was used against Ripple, when the truth is, that's why Joseph Lubin and all his friends hated Ripple, is because they were being transparent, and the bad guys knew they had something to hide, and Ripple's transparency was a big bright light on the difference between Ripple's transparency and theirs. So what does any good bad guy do? They point at the good guys, and they make it seem like the good guys are doing what they're actually doing. It's a playbook, folks, that we've watched for years. This is why I showed up to this fight. Now, we're going to go, before I go, remember, XRP Las Vegas is in 6 days, folks. There's discount tickets in my group at daixrp.com. If you're wanting to buy a ticket to go have dinner with Brad Garlinghouse, you can go to xrplasvegas.com. There's still a few general admission tickets left. You can also use code 589 if you want to go to the benefit dinner to have dinner with Brad Garlinghouse. There's only going to be, I don't think there's going to be more than 200 people in that room, so it'll be a really neat experience. I'll be there too, and you'll get to meet Christian Carlo, John Deaton. You're going to get to see Brad Combs playing a band with Christian Carlo. Michael Arrington's going to be there. I think Eleanor Terrett's going to be there, and Representative Wiley Nickel is going to be there as well. So that's going to be fun. Now, in the group, you know what we're going to do? My gut in this whole Ethgate saga has always felt like there was some combination of bad guys getting very greedy and all the world's a stage. Some combination. But we're going to talk about, in the group, we're going to talk about Ethgate and all this SEC stuff in terms of the all the world's a stage side of it. I'm the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe, hit the like button, and tell your friends and family that if you are intrigued by the whole all the world's a stage narrative, then come into the group. That's where we'll talk about it. All right.